Anti-government protests in Amman. Is economic distress paving the way for instability? I'm Imran Garda, and today on the Newsmakers, we take a look at Jordan's political discontent. All this week, we're taking a special in-depth look at Jordan, where demonstrations against corruption, unemployment and low income are threatening one of the Middle East's most stable states. The battle between the people and the kingdom has intensified since the government approved a budget last year that raised taxes and sent fuel prices soaring. Last June, King Abdullah fired Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki, a move intended to ease frustrations, but it didn't really help. Over the past 3 months, hundreds of people across Jordan have been gathering outside royal palaces to draw attention to the lack of jobs. So, is the king ignoring people's concerns? And could that cost him the throne? Yola Abdavid reports.
To an outsider, Amman is chaotically busy. Plenty of everything and enough choice to keep most people happy. Not everything is sweet though, and not everyone is content. Ahmad graduated in English literature from his hometown Irbid near the Syrian border. He wants to see wide political reform in Jordan.
Authority should be for the people and the constitution should be changed. There should be political reforms, for example an election law to enforce people's rights.
Protests against unemployment and rising prices started last year. King Abdullah has followed his father's tendency of dissolving governments to defuse public unrest. The current Prime Minister is Omar al-Rassas. He's Jordan's 13th leader during King Abdullah's 2 decades on the throne.
Risky thing today in Jordan is the lack of trust between people and the system. And this is very critical issue because you cannot convince people you are doing something good for them. And people will start accusing you of corruption, of nepotism and favoritism. So what did you do in tackling these issues that's dominating the people's mind today? In the psychology, political psychology today, you have to do actions. We are still in the phase of words.
Some protesters take their complaints directly to the top. They want to meet the king. Surrounded by lines of policemen and security officers, dozens of unemployed men have camped for a few weeks close to one of the royal palaces.
I went to meet them, but after 10 minutes of talking to them at the protest camp, we were told by the authorities to leave because they claimed, the officers, that we didn't have the proper permits to be at the protest camp. We have other permits, of course, to be in Jordan. So what we've done, we've decided to talk to them away from the protest area and away from the police.
Saleh is from Man in the south, and Yasser lives near the Syrian border.
We have come out because unemployment has reached an unbelievable level. Jordan receives aid, but we don't see where the money goes. We want jobs. We are here to protest and ask for more opportunities.
I have been here for 18 days, sleeping under the bridge, asking for work and something to eat. I don't cheat, and I'm not a drug dealer. That is why I am here, and hundreds of others, but nothing's happened so far.
We asked for an interview with 4 different government ministries, but unfortunately we didn't receive any replies to our numerous requests. All the while, public debt is rising, and keeping a lid on inflation and social frustration is difficult, with almost 20% of the population unemployed. In private and increasingly in public, there is sympathy for the protesters.
Today, people are going to the royal court, which means the trend is showing you that people are not afraid anymore to say, where is the problem? Plus, I think we have to be honest in Jordan. It appeared recently, even among the political class, that the real center of power is the royal court.
Some see similarities with times of tensions in Jordan in 1989 and after the protest in 2011. The difference now are the platforms of social media.
People are becoming more vocal and bold in Jordan, I feel, and they are very critical of the situation, of the economic situation and the political situation, and there are people who are just stating their mind about red topics that we never before thought of talking about.
While many Jordanians choose not to complain too publicly and buy only what they can afford, in the age of mass media, a new generation says they're not as willing to be gagged or suffer in silence. Yolo Abdavid, The Newsmakers, Amman.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Amman by Jawad Anani. He was Jordan's Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs. Also with us is Oraib Al-Rantawi. He's the Director of the Al-Quds Center for Political Studies. And with me here in the studio is Hussam Al-Abdallat. He was a senior official within Jordan's government until he quit to become a dissident journalist. After speaking out about corruption, he was arrested, charged with defamation on social media and jailed. But I'm glad that you're here safely in studio with me, Hussam. Let me start with you, Jawad Anani. So, the Jordanian government getting an injection from the Germans, $100 million, $334 million injection from Riyadh, other nations committing. It sounds as if this government and this economy is being propped up by foreign governments. Is that where we are at?
Well, the most important event that came to the support of Jordan recently was the London conference, as you know, which was held at the end of February, and it donated or pledged $2,500 million for Jordan from 4 different governments, basically France, United Kingdom, and Japan, and from the European Reconstruction and Development Bank. Now we hear that other governments like Germany is chipping in. So anyway, that helps meet the pressing circumstances that Jordan is passing through right now. But it does not resolve the problem, of course.
Okay, so Hussam, there are those who would say, if you look at Jordan's geography, unfortunately for Jordan, it neighbors Iraq, it neighbors Syria, 1 million Syrian refugees came in. The country just couldn't cope. And therefore, it's a victim of geopolitics. That's why there was the London Investment Conference. That's why these countries are helping. It's not because of anything that was rotten internally. It's just a victim of circumstance. Your response to that?
Thank you, Mr. Imran, and thank you for TRT award, and welcome to Dr. Anani and Dr. Oraib Al-Rantawi. Really, I want to speak about the problem in Jordan, real problem in Jordan. Always our government and our regime say our problem in Jordan because we have war in Syria, we have problem with Iraq, we have problem in areas in Jordan, both Jordanian. But really the problem in Jordan, we don't have freedom, we don't have jobs for people, we don't have a real democracy. The Jordanian people need a healthy political democracy, not democracy for decoration. Everything in Jordan is decoration, parliament decoration. We have Dr. Anani, he work in government. I work with him. He's my teacher, really. He know in Jordan we have 3 government, not 1 government. This is the point. This is the problem in Jordan. The problem in Jordan, that's from outside.
Okay.
The problem's inside on Jordan.
Okay, so we'll expand on it in a moment. Oraib Rantawi, do you agree with that? The problem doesn't come from outside. It comes from a lack of freedom and opportunity and growth on the inside.
I think the problem resulted from both dimensions, not only from outside. Yes, we faced serious challenges because of this regional turmoil that Jordan also impacted during the last decade almost. But also we have serious problems when it comes to the public policies adopted by the successive governments in the last 10 or maybe 20 years. Governments used to put unemployment, poverty on the top of the Jordanian agenda, national agenda, but without any serious success to deal with these major 2 heavy files on our agenda. There is a problem, yes. I can agree that we are not a full-fledged democracy in Jordan. We have serious problems. There is no serious breakthrough in the political reform track. But I never agree with the assumption that Jordan is not affected by its geopolitics and by the regional conflicts at all.
Right.
Only take one figure that we have 1 million Syrian refugees or more
Right.
This is a heavy burden on our shoulder.
Yeah, it's actually more than 1.3 million Syrian refugees. It's a massive number. Hussam, is your problem with the king, Abdullah, or with the government of Omar Razaz and the prime minister, with the government that he appointed to sort things out? Where's your problem?
I tell you before, we have not one government in Jordan. We have three governments.
Right.
The government of Real Court, the government with Fourth Circle, Dr. Omar Razaz, and we have government from Jordanian intelligence. Not the government, only government in Dr. Omar Razaz. He's not the owner, he's not make the decision in Jordan.
If King Abdullah says, Omar Razaz, thank you very much, but please leave, we've got a new government, would you be encouraged by that?
The problem will be stay. Why? Because the people must choose the prime minister. The prime minister, the king, he chose the prime minister. The prime minister, like Omar Razaz, he don't choose all the team.
Right.
Our friend, they know that. Dr. Omar Razaz maybe chose 4 or 5 ministers. He not shows all the team.
Right.
The king shows, and the wife of the king shows, and the Jordanian intelligence shows the team with to any government in Jordan.
Right.
Well, this is really problem for us.
Jawad Annani, is it a lack of political skill and a lack of democracy that's at the root of the problem, or is it just basically a lack of sound economic fiscal policy?
Well, first of all, let me comment on what Mr. Arabiyat has said. I think that, you know, what he's saying is just, you know, not non-scientific words that he's saying. And I really hate to describe the situation as he did. Of course, naturally, the intelligence in Jordan has acquired greater power as a result of the security issues which have been dominating in the region. The second one is that His Majesty always, you know, he acts like the president of a country. So he has lots of executive power. Nobody can deny that. So in a way, this has been the case in Jordan for a long time, since 1921. Now, the question that about democracy and reform, I agree that we need democratic transition in Jordan, simply because the issues now require that people understand and interact with government policies. Without an interactive approach between both governments and the people, it is very difficult for people to be convinced that they should make sacrifices. So in a way, we need 2-party or at least 3-party systems, that the party that wins the elections will have a program that it will throw at the people, and the majority of the, once it wins the majority, then everybody else will be content with that. I mean, we cannot continue to listen only to the people who complain because they have not been winning as a result of the economic policy that any government is applying. So in a way, the people who are happy keep mum and they do not mention it, they do not pronounce it. But the people who are suffering are complaining all the time. So anyway, you only hear complaints, but you don't hear appreciation. In a party system, I think we have matured enough to move into the transition where people make decisions and people are the source of authority. And that is why when people make a choice, then that is the choice that should be applied and implemented.
Okay,
so in a way that will give more acceptance.
Right.
That will give more acceptance.
Right.
Yes.
So let me ask you, Hussam, because when we look at the people who have been protesting and the people who have been complaining, to use Jawad Annani's words, there's a mix of people. So you have those who purely have political slogans, those who purely have economic slogans. And then you have, for example, the Ikhwan, the Muslim Brotherhood. They have their own thing, their own agenda. There are others who talk about normalization with Israel and so forth, which, from an outsider's perspective looking at it, it looks as if there's no sort of general theme. Yes, it starts with economics and maybe IMF requirements and too many sacrifices that people are making, but it looks like a mixed bag of things among the protesters. Is that a problem, that there's no unified theme amongst those people in the tents, those people on the streets?
I want to do something, just some words. the old of our state, 100 years now, still we ask another country to help us.
Right.
If you have children, 20 years, 30 years, he will depend for himself, okay? 100 years, still ask another country to help us. This is our problem. Our problems, we don't have a really solution for problems. Now, Jordanian before, and Dr. Anani, he work in government, and he know everything. And maybe he speak now something not till another one in Jordan speak different here.
But if you don't ask other people for help right now, what do you want? You want people starving on the streets? You want poverty?
No.
Right.
We have assets. We have assets in Jordan. We have assets in Jordan. We sold all our assets in Jordan. Still, the debt for our country, $40 billion.
$40 billion.
We have 9 billion people in Jordan, and we have everything. It's not poor country as the government
But there aren't
says.
really any natural resources.
We have. Yes, we have.
Like what?
We have potash, we have patra, we have clever people, we have education, we have everything in Jordan. Our country is rich. It's not poor as the government says.
Okay.
So
let's ask Uraib. Hussam's saying this is a country with a lot of human capital, a young population, very educated population. I spent 6 weeks in Jordan a decade ago. I can attest to that. Educated, smart, young people, right? He's saying the country's too reliant on foreigners. It should be able to stand on its own 2 feet. Uraib?
This is now a deep understanding among the Jordanians, all the Jordanians, whether in the streets, those who demonstrate against the government, or even within the decision-making circles in Jordan. There is a belief now that Jordan should move from total dependency to independent country, self-reliant country. This is really one of the issues where there is a common maybe consensus around it. But yet it needs really, it's not a decision that you can take over one night and being shifted from total dependence to a self-reliant country. I think it's a process, and it may take years and decades to achieve such a big goal for this country. But I do agree with what you said, that we have a fragmented protest in the streets. We have different demands for different group peoples. It's by all means shrinking those days, but that doesn't reflect the public anger about the economic and financial and taxation policies of this government and the previous ones as well. Also, I want to comment on this dilemma about political reform and economic reform. We can go parallel in both tracks, and the major lesson learned from our 20, 30 years experience, that without a serious economic reform, without a breakthrough in the democratization process, economic reform will be lack of social sensitivity. Economic reform will be enclaved with a lot of rumors and realities about corruption. The cost of corruption is high.
Right.
And I think the only way to minimize the bill of corruption is to go far in the political reform and the democratization process.
Right. Jawad Anani, what should King Abdullah do now?
I think that His Majesty King Abdullah should really address the issue right smack, as he did face the political dilemmas. Both gentlemen, I agree with both gentlemen, Mr. Rantawi has pointed out that it is a dilemma. I don't think it's a dilemma. I think it is two-pronged process that must be completed, that must be implemented in complementarity with each other. You cannot do one without the other. Why? Because the transition process that will require at least 5 or 6 years, and that means we have to convince people that they should really be patient. I remember that Turkey in the early 1980s, came up with Mr. Turgut Özal, who promised that he will transform Turkey at that time, but he asked people to wait with him, to be patient, to accept sacrifices. Now, the Jordanian people would accept sacrifices if they see a light at the end of the tunnel, if they believe that their best men are really in control, if they believe that there is a very constructive and obvious plan that is being put to lay and it is being implemented with seriousness. People need to gain confidence that the government and the king are really taking a very serious and very determined and process towards bringing Jordan out of its economic woes right now. And poverty and unemployment are the two basic challenges which Jordan must address. The only way to do that is to go for serious investment processes and to get out of this rentier society approach where the government hires 42% of the labor force in Jordan.
Okay.
This is too much of a burden on government, which is allowing very little money for the private sector to move. Okay,
I've got to wrap. So, Hussam, I'm going to give you the final word here, but I just want to know, you'll go back, right? Are you okay with going back and
go back to Jordan?
To Jordan?
I can't.
You can't?
I can't go back to Jordan because
of what you said.
If I go to back, will catch me because we don't have democracy in Jordan. We have. Our government is not, she's not respect another opinion.
Let me ask it to you the other way around then. What will it take for you to go back? What would give you the confidence to trust them to go back?
We have a gap with our king. We have gap between people and government. When our king be close to us, and we will be close with him.
Okay.
I think, we love the people. Some people in Jordan love the king, because for that we go to Jordanian to the royal palace.
Right.
Because we know the problem from the royal palace and the solution there.
Okay.
If our king help us, live like us, live us like we love him,
yes.
I will come back to Jordan.
Okay, Hussam, I've got to wrap. But gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Hussam Al-Abdallah, Urayb Rantawi and Jawad Annani. Thanks again. Still to come, to best from worst. In just a matter of weeks, India has become home to Asia's strongest performing currency. What's fueled the rupee's recovery? And will it get Modi re-elected? And it turns out Poland is actually really keen on taking in migrants, just so long as they're not Muslim. Until recently, the Indian rupee was the worst performing currency in Asia. But in just a 5-week period, it saw a complete turnaround, becoming the continent's strongest. So what? Well, the world's biggest democracy will soon hold an election, beginning the largest democratic exercise in history. Supporters of Prime Minister Narendra Modi say he's been the driving force behind strong economic growth, reason enough to re-elect him. But his opponents, especially from the opposition Congress party, say he's presided over the worst unemployment rate in decades. Natalie Perhernan has more.
Election season has officially begun in India. With 5 weeks of campaigning and 900 million voters to woo, this is a numbers game.
नए भारत के संस्कार है और दूसरी तरफ वंशवाद और भ्रष्टाचार का बोलबाला है। एक तरफ दमदार चौकीदार है और दूसरी तरफ दागदारों की भरमार है।
The Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, came to power in 2014. Modi styled himself then as the candidate who would create jobs, be a champion for low-income farmers and boost the economy. His economic program hasn't been without controversy. He unveiled a demonetisation plan in 2016, which saw most of the country's banknotes invalidated almost overnight in a bid to flush out black money. It left India in a cash shortage for months afterwards, and ultimately almost all of that money ended up back in circulation. But under his tenure, the economy has grown by an average of 7% each year. That's a higher rate than China's. Still, some voters say that the benefits of an expanded economy haven't trickled down to ordinary people. And that growth hasn't translated into jobs. The government was accused of failing to release data earlier this year, which showed unemployment had risen to a 45-year high of 6.1%.
The biggest issue this year is unemployment. The jobless should be able to find jobs in this country.
It's fast becoming one of the most important issues for the opposition Congress party.
In this country, in every state, young people are searching for jobs. Wherever you go and ask a young person what they do, they reply, "I'm not doing anything."
The Congress party is also trying to win voters with a promise to provide a minimum income of about $1,000 a year for India's 50 million poorest families. The Congress party calls it an assault on poverty. The BJP calls it a false dream. With India now in full election mode, it's all part of the numbers game that will ultimately be decided at the ballot box. Natalie Pohanen, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, we're joined by Salman Anis Soz. He's a member of the opposition Indian National Congress Party and the author of The Great Disappointment, How Narendra Modi Squandered a Unique Opportunity to Transform the Indian Economy. On the other side of the aisle is Gopal Krishna Agarwal, a spokesman for the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP. And Amit Kapoor is the honorary chairman of India's Institute for Competitiveness. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Salman Soz, let me begin with you. So Congress has been saying a bunch of things recently in the build-up to the elections from the leadership, from the upper echelons, that BJP has done a monumental mismanagement of the economy, reckless decisions, it's been flawed, and that the economy is a mess. But this is not really true, is it?
Oh, it is absolutely true. It's absolutely true. If you look at the broad indicators of what is going on in India, then you get a sense of how bad things are. We have unemployment rate is at a 45-year high. That's crazy. 45-year high. Inequality is rising by leaps and bounds. We have farmers in perpetual distress, especially after 2016's demonetization. Our small businesses are in deep trouble. Millions have lost jobs. Especially after the goods and services tax was launched. It's a crazy tax. I mean, the World Bank called it the second most complex indirect tax in the world. And here we are. The government has been trying to revise GDP data. You can revise the GDP data, but that actually gives you, that creates problems in the international community because you don't want to cook your books. And there's a credibility problem with India's national statistics right now. I was at the World Bank for many years, and we always used to worry about Chinese data. But I suspect now Indian data is going to be viewed with a lot of skepticism as well.
Okay, so Gopal Krishna Agarwal, we've got Salman painting the picture there, saying this Modi-led government has made a mess of the economy, and he's thrown out a few indicators there, especially the unemployment rate being the highest in 45 years. The man has a point, doesn't he?
I tell you, when we inherited in 2014, our economy was in fragile 5. All our macroeconomic parameters, including inflation, GDP growth rate, fiscal deficit, level of corruption, ease of doing business, all were in a very bad shape. And over the 5 years, when we got a mandate in 2014, It was not to manage that economy, but there was mandate was to transform the economy and give some reformative changes to the whole structure. And then over these 5 years, if you see, we have done a good level of achievement on tax collection, on ease of doing business. We have moved from 142 to 77. On financial inclusion, our government has done exemplary work. 55% of the whole bank accounts opened last year as per World Bank are opened in India. And from direct benefit transfer, Aadhaar linking, the complete delivery mechanism in the social security schemes of the government is now most of the time leakage proof and very much targeted. And if you see the macroeconomic parameters over the last 5 years, now currently our inflation is below 3%, our fiscal deficit is at 3.5%. We are the fastest growing economy in the world with 7.5%
Okay,
of
so Gopal,
GDP,
again,
and on
these
ease of doing business.
these are
And
interesting
on the
stats.
corruption,
Okay.
a last point,
Okay.
on the corruption, we have done exemplary work with the recovery of money from the corporate sector, and with IBC, NCLT, NPA resolutions.
Okay.
So, and infrastructure development, everywhere you will see a marked difference, and our economy is now the 6th largest economy in the world and poised to be 5th largest economy in near future.
Gopal, why is the unemployment rate then at its highest in 45 years?
The issue is that we always had a problem with the employment data. The data, quality of data was always an issue. And earlier we were taking a data collection survey after every 5 years. We tried to improve that, and that definition of job is also a problem. We understand that employment is a problem in Indian economy, and this is not that now it has come. It is over the last several years that employment is a problem in the issue and is a cause of concern.
Okay.
But we have tried to solve it through entrepreneurship, self-employment, mudra loan, etc. And these surveys do not cover the whole data, and it only talks about government jobs and
I want to bring in
organized sector.
So you have a question about how you actually define the data there. Salman, I'll give you a chance to respond, but first, Amit, which of the two is closer to the truth in your opinion, Amit?
So, this is a very important debate that we're actually talking about. Like both Mr. Soos and Gopal have actually a point. But I would like to give a certain set of insights into this whole thing. If you really look at the kind of economic situation that we were actually in, from 1991 onwards, India has actually had a fairly stupendous growth. But then, of course, there was a time frame between 2008 to 2014 when India drastically slowed down. But there were a few important things that actually were done by the government, which includes reforms like GST. Whether we like it or not, GST is one of the most important reforms because it actually formalizes the process in the economy. It is important, it is complicated without a doubt. But what needs to happen is that we need to rationalize this a little further, and it would be one of the biggest reforms that India has actually undertaken over a period of time. So there is that whole thing that actually happens here. The second thing, if you really look at it, is that the way Indian economy has actually moved. Like one, of course, is the GDP point of view. The other one is very clearly that we have to understand that there is the social progress view to the world. India has actually improved socially very significantly in the last 5 years. The biggest leaps that we have actually seen have actually happened in areas like what I call access to banking or financial inclusion. And that is one big thing that has happened. Access to information technology. That is one big thing that has actually happened. So I am looking at a fairly big positive. Yes, without a doubt. We have an employment problem, and it has actually persisted for ages. It is not something which is new. We have not had the right data for the last 7 decades. We have to actually fundamentally set right the way our data collection mechanism happens, and so on and so forth. But yes, if you really look at it, India is going to face a challenge that we are going to see, and that is going to be about job growth, employment generation, and so on and so forth. But all in all, I think things have really improved from a social perspective. If you really look at the data from 1990 until 2017, India has improved very significantly socially across the world. But the last 5 years have been the most significant.
Okay, so Salman Soos, under the BJP, there has been social progress within which economic progress is folded in.
Well, you see, the problem with that narrative is that the government's policies have actually hurt the economy much more than helped the economy. The reason being that, the first 2 years of the government, and, our agricultural sector is pretty big because a lot of people work in that sector. Even though it's a smaller portion of the GDP, a lot of people work in that sector. They're trying to eke out a living. First 2 years, there was a monsoon failure, and that means not enough rains. That means farmers were suffering. And what did the government do at that time? They actually, in India, we have a system of supporting farm prices. They actually kept them low. Then that hurt farmers at a time when monsoons failed. Then in 2016, the Prime Minister did demonetization, which disproportionately hurt the poor. Then came a GST that's extremely complex, that hurt businesses, small businesses, and that actually did not formalize much. That actually did hurt these small businesses, and lots of people, millions of people lost jobs. So what is the big picture? If you think about the big picture, when our government was there for 10 years, about 140 million Indians were lifted out of extreme poverty, 140 million income level poverty. Then the UNDP's done another report from 2005 to 2015-16. They've done a report which talks about multidimensional poverty, which includes more than income. It talks about social indicators as well. And according to that, even more people were brought out of extreme poverty during our time. But forget our time. Let's talk about this government's time. The trouble with the Modi government is that they want to take credit even where credit is not due. For example, they can talk about, say, direct benefits transfer, or providing banking services to poor people, and that's a great thing. But they'll never mention who created the platform for that. That was our government. Because you wouldn't have that without us.
Let's ask Gopal
one
about
other thing. One final point. On honesty, on transparency, this government has set India back in a huge way. What they're doing is there's a system of electoral bonds, basically funding of political parties through secret bonds where donors put in the money. Nobody except the government and the State Bank of India know who's donated what money to what political party. And 95% of funds have come to the ruling BJP from that channel. It's a huge channel. So basically, the government and the ruling party have decided that they're going to join hands with a few big business houses, and create an oligarchy and run India. This is the standard technique of oligarchs and fascists everywhere and strongmen. That's what Mr. Modi is trying to do. We will not let him do it.
Gopal.
I would like to mention here two things. How do you improve economy? That you lower taxes and increase higher compliances. If you see over the past 5 years, we have not raised a single corporate tax, and though we have reduced the corporate tax. Similarly, under GST, indirect tax has fallen from around 28% average to highest slab being 18%. Only 6 items are in the 28% slab. So indirect tax has been reduced, corporate and direct tax has been reduced, and both the collection has increased. So there is better compliance and lower taxation. Second thing is, if we look into the delivery mechanism, social security delivery, we have, without reducing a single pie on the subsidy, we have been able to save 90,000 annually on the social security scheme, and we have increased the outreach of Ujjwala scheme to 6 crore women. Housing sector has been increased to poor for 1.5 crore people. 37 kilometers of road are being built every day. There were 65 airports when we took over. Now there are more than 102.
Sure, but certainly,
rural housing is going on at 131. Last point I would like to tell you is, Mr. Sos was talking about poverty. I will give you a figure. Poverty, BPL persons at the time of 2011 was 22%. In 2019, it has come to 17%. And we target in 2021 to 15% of below poverty line. That is the targeted approach that we are taking. Everything is
Hold on, Gopal, you got to give me a chance here.
For us.
Okay, you got to give me a chance here. I'll tell you why. I'm running out of time dramatically. I've got 1.5 minutes left. So I'm going to give Amit a chance and then Salman a chance. So both of you, it's in your interests and the interest of our viewers to keep this brief. Amit, go ahead.
So I think if you really look at it, there is a political narrative to it in terms of saying that Prime Minister Modi is a populist leader and so on and so forth. I think I'm not really getting into the politics of the BJP or the Congress here, but I must actually share that in my recent book, The Age of Awakening, I've also said that the populism actually started with Mrs. Gandhi. In fact, she was the most populist leader that we have actually seen. So she had taken steps which were important from a social point of view. And that's a similar thing that we have actually seen in Prime Minister Modi's regime or administration. Overall, if you really look at it, economy has actually strengthened in many ways. Of course, there is that weakening of jobs that we are actually seeing, but I think I really do not have the adequate data to make a comment on it. But then if you really look at the growth numbers, there has always been a problem that we have actually seen in India in the last 30 years, and that is about jobless growth or jobless recovery. As you would actually see, there are very few sectors which have actually created some stunning growth stories and so on and so forth. But this is where we have to actually fundamentally understand that India needs to look at states as its growth engines and really start delivering a state vision or state level visions and really move forward on this. But overall, socially, we have moved forward. Without a doubt, it has been a very significant period. Very simple things like, say, nutrition, simple things like sanitation. I think India has done exceedingly well. We can't really even complain about it. How can we even say that there was something wrong with the Swachh Bharat campaign? It is one of the finest things that we could have actually done, and there have been processes.
Amit, I need to get Salman in here. Okay. Salman, sure. I'm going to have to interrupt you and wrap up when time's up, but go ahead.
Okay. You know, I typically talk about economic issues. So, you know, on GDP growth, because everybody talks about growth, and the government revised its GDP estimates one day before presenting the interim budget just recently. And they revised upwards the GDP growth by 1.2 percentage points. That's incredibly crazy. You know, that it makes no sense. Nobody can believe it. It's unbelievable. And they say that India grew fastest in the year of demonetization. That is when there was this huge disruption to the economy. They say that India grew by 8.2%. It is totally incredulous. It's unbelievable. They're making it's so I don't know what to say. I'm just shocked that anybody would even kind of share that data from the government of India, and it's shocking. That is why the fiscal deficit ratio is meeting its targets, because they increase the GDP. You increase the denominator, you keep the numerator steady. That's how you get your ratios, and that is why we say that they are cooking books. In fact, Governor Raghuram Rajan recently said, he said, people are saying, why is there a growth and no jobs? He said, maybe the growth is not that much. Maybe that's why there are no jobs. That's what's happening in India right now.
Okay, well, we looked at the economy today. We'll be exploring the issues chunk by chunk in the build-up to the largest democratic exercise in the world. Gentlemen, I thank you very much for joining us. Salman Soz, Amit Kapoor, and Gopal Krishna Agarwal.
For now, I am very comfortable in Poland, and I don't know what could happen to make me want to go back to Ukraine. I have parents who live in Ukraine. I have a house that my parents have built for me, a whole family. But still, it's not what I have here.
Poland's government has long been proud of its strong stance against migration. While other European nations welcomed in hundreds of thousands of people who'd fled war, Poland stood firm with its borders firmly closed. Warsaw has resisted taking in refugees from Syria, Afghanistan and Eritrea, among others. But then the government realized the country had a problem, a massive labor shortage. So their solution, oversee the largest influx of migrant workers the country has seen in recent history. Over the last few years, more than 2 million foreigners have arrived in Poland. They're mostly Christian from neighboring Ukraine. So are migrants okay so long as they're not Muslim? Well, to answer that, we're joined by Polish MP Dominik Tarczyński from the ruling Law and Justice Party. He's also the Vice President of the European Conservatives Group in the Council of Europe. Dominik, is that it? 2 million Ukrainians are okay, but not one Muslim, because that's just how you guys feel about it?
Good evening, Imran. Thank you for having me. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with Islamophobia. It's all about safety. As I said previously, everyone is allowed to apply. Everyone is allowed to submit the documents, ask for the permission, ask for a visa, and then our interior minister will decide if he's needed for our society. The difference between immigration and refugees as a legal difference. You are mixing words. It's very important because the difference is quite big. First of all, refugee is the person who flees to the first safe country by the international law. Immigrant, especially illegal immigrant is not welcome in Poland. This is what we promised, and these words will be kept. Basically, we are not talking about people who are in need. We are not talking about Muslims. We are talking about a law, international law and Polish law. We don't want any illegal migration in Poland. This is what we promised. This is why our government was elected, and not even one Muslim illegal migrant will come to Poland, ever.
What do you mean by safety? Why is safety connected to Muslim? Explain that to me.
First of all, that's very clear, very simple. In Germany, over 200,000 of so-called refugees just vanished, disappeared. Nobody knows who are they, where are they, and what are they going to do. Nobody knows. 200,000 people. Can you imagine how many people is that? It's just crazy. So this quota system, which was offered by Germany, failed, as we know, and this is against our safety in Europe. This is very huge issue. First of all, I'm talking about the terrorist attacks committed by radical Islamists. I couldn't hear very strong words from imams who would condemn this kind of attacks. That's number one. Rapes in Sweden, hidden for 13 months. I'm talking about the youth festival where girls were raped by illegal Muslim migration immigrants. And
you're saying it has nothing to do with Muslims,
hidden.
but then you're saying
Germany,
Muslims are terrorists and Muslims are rapists.
Where people were raped as well, and that was hidden.
Right. Okay, but again, you're saying it has nothing to do with Muslims, but
of
Muslims
course
are rapists and terrorists.
But these cases,
right.
But these, it's true.
Okay.
It's true. But these cases are committed by illegal Muslim migration, which was proven by the police in Sweden, in Germany,
an example,
in France, in many other countries.
Okay, so Dominic, let me take your logic then. And if I have to look at the biggest terrorist attack that has captured the international imagination in recent times, the Christchurch mosque attack, or mosque attacks, right? Carried out by someone calling himself a Christian, right?
And the difference, I
so
think the difference between us, all the Western world condemned this attack.
Okay, so certainly. So is there then a safety problem with Christian migrants, such as the Ukrainians, because of that mosque attack?
No. First of all, the man in Christchurch was not a migrant. I think he should spend his whole life in jail. And as I said, the whole world, Western world, condemned that. I couldn't hear condemnation from the Saudi Arabia or other Sharia law states after many terrorist attacks in Sweden, where we have Malmö and other places where police is afraid to get in. So I'm talking about the scale and the reaction. The scale is completely different. And the reaction from our side, as a Christians and as a Western civilization, compare it with the Saudis, with Iran, where people are hanged for their homosexuality.
Okay, you're talking about Saudi and you're talking about Iran
religion.
and all these
it's
places.
Completely
right?
different.
Okay. But these are places that are not affected by migration, right? What I'm asking you, Dominic, right? Has Poland had a history of problems with Muslims? Yes or no?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
How many Muslims are in Poland?
Not at all. We've got Tatars. We've got Tatars who are, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Listen,
how many Muslims
we've
are in
got Tatars who are in Poland for 700 years.
Yeah.
1%, maybe.
It's less than 0.1%.
But what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to say that we want to have peaceful people. It has nothing to do with a religion. It has nothing to do with Islamophobia.
But you just told me it has
something
something
to do with As I said, we've got Tatars who are so peaceful, who fought.
You just said you won't have one because they're related to terrorism and rapes,
modern,
right?
Radical. Imran, listen to me. I'm talking about the wave of illegal migration, which started in 2015. Not about religion, but it's linked to the religion and radical Islamists.
But if I have to look at Poland's history,
this wave and about this madness started by Germany in Europe.
Dominic, historically, Poland has had far more problems with Christians than they have had with Muslims, haven't they? Have Muslims been involved in partitions, death camps, invasions in Poland?
No. We as you know, our King Sobieski stopped Muslims in Vienna So that's the very huge achievement in the history of Polish history.
Okay, so
if not King Sobieski,
in the 18th century, Poland was partitioned 3 times. Was
now
it by,
we have Hydra.
was it by Muslim powers?
You know what Hydra means.
And I'm saying you want to talk about Vienna. What I'm saying is, okay, if we want to go to history, Poland was partitioned 3 times. Was it done by Muslim powers? Dominic?
No, what I'm saying is, this war of civilization, as I call it, is just a fact. Okay, I'm not going to
those are the
Iraq,
words
I'm not
also
going
of the
to
shooter in
Saudi
Christchurch.
Arabia, I'm not going to Iran.
The shooter in Christchurch in his manifesto said he's
That's why I
fighting this
condemned
war of
that.
civilization
I did
as well.
condemn
Against Muslims that he can't name that are all against him.
I know. Okay, but how many terror attacks? How many terror attacks were committed by Christians in the name of the religion? How many were them were shouting, Christ is the Lord? None. 0. And every single committed by the Muslim is followed by Allah Akbar.
Yes,
that's the fact.
Okay,
and the difference
this
between
is again,
criminals,
it's the association
Christian
you're
criminals,
making with,
is that they are not committing it in the name of the faith.
Can I go back to your agreements with Brussels, or you're being a part of the club, right? So as an outsider looking in, as Poland being a member of the European Union, when it came to the quotas, so the European Union said, okay, guys, we're all in the same club together. There's a refugee crisis, right? And we need to have quotas. We need to share the burden. From the outside looking in, it looked as if, with Poland, it was as if everybody had agreed to go out to dinner and split the bill. Everybody went out to dinner, everybody ate, but at the end, hold on. At the end, Poland said, oh no, I'm not paying because I took my other friend out for lunch earlier and I paid. I brought in Ukrainian migrants. I brought in 2 million. So I don't want to be a part of this burden. Why do you guys stay a part of this club if you so fundamentally disagree with the Germans and the others on absolutely everything? Why do you bother?
Because Germany and Russians, they want to drink Dom Perignon and they want us to drink water. That is the difference. So if they want us to have a lunch together and split the bill, they have to eat the same thing and they drink the same thing. The club means that we are equal. We have the same rights and the same duties. But it doesn't work this way. Germany asked for a deal with Russians. I'm talking about Nord Stream 2. French, they are selling Mistrals to Russia. They are making a business. They don't care about our safety. And then they want us to pay the bill. It doesn't work this way. It's not going to work this way. We will never agree for the deals with the Russians and not saying anything.
Right.
So if they want solidarity, if they want to have this club with us as a partners, they have to behave like a partners. Mistrals from France and Nord Stream 2 are the symbols. Obviously, there is much more to be given as an example. So, first of all, it's not us who started this madness. It's Germany who started.
Right.
Angela Merkel was looking for cheap labor, so she found out that they want to work, that they want to contribute to this society by their taxes. They don't want to learn language. And then she decided, okay, so let's spread them around. Let's say that this is our responsibility, not mine. And then we're going to get rid of this problem. No. We're not going to take any of those. It's not our war. It's not our colony. We never had any colonies in our history. So we want to be a partner. We want to be equal partner with the same rights and the same duties. That's why I keep repeating, not even one illegal will come to Poland ever.
Dominic, it's been really great getting into the mind of the current Polish government, and good to have you on the program. Thanks for joining us. That's all for this edition of The Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. Next time, is racism tolerated by Britain's ruling Conservatives? We debate why Tory politicians who made anti-Muslim remarks were welcomed back into the party. Until then, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.